The beginning of the women's suffrage movement was when Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were prevented from attending the World Anti-Slavery Convention and decided that women had to separate women's suffrage and black suffrage movements. This led to the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848. Almost 40 years later, little by little, individual states began granting women's suffrage, with Wyoming in 1890, followed by Colorado, Idaho, Utah, Washington, and 10 others. A huge victory for women in politics was the election of Jeannette Rankin of Montana to the House of Representatives in 1916. The same year, Woodrow Wilson, a previous opposer to women's suffrage, stated that the Democratic Party platform will support suffrage. 4 years later, after Rankin's triumph, white women got the right to vote on August 26, 1920. After this granting of the women's right to vote, we began to see a rise in female politicians. Frances Perkins, Secretary of Labor under President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was the first woman to serve in the cabinet and helped write the New Deal legislation in 1933. Margaret Chase Smith was a Maine Republican who was the first woman to serve in both the House and the Senate from 1940 to 1973. Despite women getting the right to vote in 1920, black women were excluded from this legislature, which led to the movement to secure the right to vote for black women. Some incredible black female suffragists include Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, Mary Ann Shadd Cary, Mary Church Terrell, Nannie Helen Burroughs, and Ida B. Wells. Diane Nash co-founded the student branch of the Civil Rights Movement and worked for voting rights in the South. She helped gain passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 through nonviolent techniques. 7 years later, Shirley Chisholm became the first black major party presidential candidate in 1972. She said, "My greatest political asset, which professional politicians fear, is my mouth, out of which come all kinds of things one shouldn't always discuss for reasons of political expediency." In 1984, Geraldine Ferrero was the first woman to be nominated for vice president on a major ticket. "If we can do this, we can do anything," she said at the 1984 Democratic National Convention in San Francisco. In 2001 to 2009, Condoleezza Rice became the first black woman to serve as the U.S. National Security Advisor under President George W. Bush and the first black woman to serve as a U.S. Secretary of State. In 2008, Sarah Palin became the Republicans' first female vice presidential nominee. In 2016, Hillary Clinton ran for president as the first female nominee for that office by a major U.S. party. Sadly, she lost to Donald J. Trump, but was an inspiration to a lot of girls and women along the way. Before running for president, Clinton worked as a lawyer, served as the First Lady of Arkansas, the First Lady of the U.S., and a senator representing New York, and the U.S. Secretary of State. In 2017, Nikki Haley was elected to be the first female governor of South Carolina when she was just 38 years old. She became the first Indian American to serve in a cabinet-level position when President Trump selected her as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. In 2020, Kamala Harris was elected Vice President of the United States in the 2020 election, and she was sworn in on January 20th, 2021. She was a U.S. Senator from California chosen by Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden as his running mate. Harris is the first woman and the first Southeast Asian woman and African American to serve as U.S. Vice President. Joe Biden broke Clinton's record of women in his cabinet with his nomination of 12 women. Some of them include Cecilia Rouse, who is the first black chair of the Council of Economic Advisors and is a well-known labor economist. Deb Haaland, as a member of the Laguna Pueblo Native American people, is the first Native American to be Interior Secretary. Janet Yellen is the first woman to lead the U.S. Treasury. Katherine Tai is the first Asian American to serve as U.S. Trade Representative. Over more than 150 years, women have succeeded and broken barriers in politics, inspiring young women today. As a whole, Project Tzedek thanks each and every one of them.